Thank you very, very much. It's a very great pleasure to be here. So what I would like to do is to share some insights on a particular focus of the UK higher education system and my university as well, and that is the focus on research culture. And I would like to look at the extent to which research culture has the potential to strengthen the link between diversity and excellence. So in the UK, national governing research bodies and some very powerful funders have recently embraced the principle that culture really matters in research. An important component of this shift is the understanding that we need to harness the creative power of diversity to enhance research. So diversity is understood to drive innovation by facilitating new research perspectives, fostering social impact, and bringing people with diverse viewpoints, life experience, etc., into this really important and interesting cauldron of chemistry that we call research. The flip side of this is that there is a recognition that we do have a toxic and hyper-competitive research environment, and that can actually devalue excellence. Discrimination and bias excludes talent, and it shuts the door on new generations of researchers. So turning a blind eye to people who bully and harass their colleagues because they are research stars, there's an understanding that this actually poisons the whole system. I think what is even more important is that this cultural component has become part of the assessment criteria of the Research Excellence Framework, which is used to allocate public funding for university research. As a result of this, there is great impetus for universities to focus on research culture. How do universities begin to develop more positive research cultures in their own organizations? Many have developed new visions for research culture. There are new leadership roles, new organizational structures, and institutional action plans. The action plans include alternative recruitment strategies for greater diversity, mandatory anti-bias training for selection panels. We have various initiatives for enhancing a sense of belonging, and there are support mechanisms such as career mentoring and financial and other support for interrupted careers, particularly when colleagues come back from maternity or parental leave. And in our university, we found that giving people support after interrupted careers has been truly beneficial. Most importantly, there is a renewed focus on supporting PhD students and early career researchers. Universities are looking at more structured and more varied progression routes. There's no longer just one route to becoming a professor. There are other routes as well, although it would be fair to say the research route is still the most dominant and the most high status. So promotion criteria are becoming much more varied. Research citizenship is becoming important, and the type of leadership that supports and promotes research team members is being rewarded more. Universities have always had dignity and respect, anti-bullying and anti-harassment strategies, but with research culture focus, these have actually been reinforced. The decision by some funders to withdraw research grants of those who have been found guilty of bullying and harassment adds another dimension of power to the efforts of universities. A further positive change has been the attempt to ensure that all actors in the research ecosystem become more visible and they become recognized for the work that they do. So, for example, this includes research administrators who often act in key roles as knowledge brokers, and technicians that carry a great deal of responsibility. For example, there is now a commitment to include technicians as listed authors in publications, and we are looking at progression routes to support technicians as well. There is greater acceptance that research outputs can be more diverse. It's no longer just the 4-star publication, and we are looking at varying conceptions of what research excellence actually means. So what is really useful about these initiatives is that the national research governance structures have committed themselves to work very closely with universities. And I think this is very important. So it's not seen so much as a top-down initiative, but more as a co-production. Universities and government are working to co-produce as partners. And what this means is that in my university, some of the most interesting research culture initiatives are happening in departments, and are happening in departments that have been through difficult times. And so this disciplinary bottom-up learning can actually bubble upwards and hopefully will also influence the policies of governments and funders. I think what's useful is that we know that research-intensive universities are incredibly status conscious, and many have status anxiety. So what is really positive about these developments is that this leadership by funders and by the governance bodies have given research culture a very high status. So this has the potential to institutionalize these components into the fabric of the university. It's no longer seen as merely, a fluffy, warm, nice thing to do on the side, but it's seen as something that universities can actually boast about, that adds to their status. The sociologist Pierre Bourdieu has analyzed the field of higher education, and he's shown us how the field is invested with its own values, its own hierarchies, its own scientific and academic capital, and its own rewards and sanctions. And I think what is powerful about these approaches is that it links directly to that system of capitals, rewards, and sanctions to at least have the potential to effect change. But of course, there are very, very many challenges. Bourdieu has also analyzed how entrenched the value system and the culture is in disciplines as well as in universities, that there's a hierarchical structure that is based on prestige and certain conceptions of meritocracy, and that these characteristics of what is scientific capital, of cultural capital, of intellectual capital, is very closely aligned to dominant groups in society. Furthermore, I have written a lot on the competition fetish in higher education and how different forms of competition, market competition, status competition, such as rankings, government-sponsored competition, such as the UK's Research Excellence Framework, Germany's Excellence Framework, how all of these actually militate against diversity. And I think that is a very key barrier, and universities, especially the elite universities, don't seem to be moving away or challenging ranking in any profound way. The other challenge is, how do we know that this works? Bodies are looking at indicators of positive research culture, and this will be a very complex and a very difficult undertaking. It may also increase the bureaucratic burden of how do we measure, how do we report, how do we account for positive research culture. We may spend more time accounting and measuring rather than doing. Universities with more historic weight and with scientific and financial resources may be able to game the system by developing innovative indicators which allows their institutions to be rewarded. So there are many issues that are going to be very challenging and that will create barriers to going forward. British universities are also working to achieve various diversity charter marks, including the Athena Swan Award and the Race Equality Charter. And a challenge here is, how do we do intersectionality in relation to diversity? And also, it's not very clear whether all of this work is joined up. There's streams of work occurring across all different parts of the university, and there is a need to really to join this up so that it has more impact, and that so colleagues are not overstretched and overstressed. What we haven't done that well yet is that in the UK is the integration of diversity into the actual content of research as a requirement to receive research funding. We know that this leads to better research. We know that it can enhance interpretation and validation, but this has not been strengthened sufficiently. And finally, not enough has been done to train new generations of researchers for the future by incorporating diversity, by incorporating sociocultural and ethical analysis into the curriculum. In Britain, this is really hard because the undergraduate program as well as the postgraduate programs are very narrow. They're very, very specialized. We don't have the liberal curriculum, history or culture, for example, of the United States. And so what we do have in some programs are options which are voluntary, and many students don't take the options. They focus on the core curriculum. So I think that it is very important for us to integrate into the core curriculum material that is sociocultural, that is ethical, and that we link that not in a generic way, but that we link that to the discipline and to the core content of the discipline. I think that, so to conclude, I think there is great potential, that there is a forward movement. I can see younger generations who come in with a completely different mindset about research culture. I can also see many colleagues across the sector who don't engage with any of these research culture initiatives, who don't engage with the mandatory training. And that's a problem and a challenge that I don't think universities have managed to work out very well. Partially, academic freedom is cited as a reason to not engage, meritocracy, excellence, etc. So there's still a lot of tensions in the system, but at least I think this focus on research culture gives us more space to work to link diversity and excellence. Thank you very much, Jan.